3.5%. And we're seeing some traction come by on a couple of these other names as well. V-Mart Retail, for instance, up around 3.5%. Good time to get in Pashupati Advani of Global Foray joining in to give us his views on the market and the themes that he likes right now. Afternoon, Pashupati. Always a pleasure speaking with you. How do you feel about the market right now? What is it that you're liking? What is it that you are uncomfortable about?
Well, what I'm seeing, like as a helicopter view, is that basically the FIs are kind of still cool on India because they've got huge profits and they've had losses in other countries, particularly in China. So they're booking profits against their losses in China and Russia over the time, and that's why we've been seeing exodus. On the other hand, we've got local money that's coming into SIPs with a vengeance. Huge numbers, getting larger and larger every month. So it's good that the savings of the retail public is coming into the markets in a if you call it a derivative way rather than straight in stocks. And what we are seeing is a sector shift. I mean, we are seeing people in countries where the markets are not really doing very much, and they're looking at India in a positive note, and they're also coming into India in defensive stocks. So, obviously the first place people look is the big index, and, what's in the big index? First of all, big banks, IT, oil and gas, and some consumer durables, and that's most of the index. So that's where we're seeing some of the action, more into the defensive stocks rather than the others. But we are seeing some movement, new money coming into indices.
New money coming into the indices. Pashupati, good speaking to you after a while. Here on the channel. Thank you for taking the time out. We're heading into the budget as well. Any high expectations this time around, and any sectoral expectations? Manufacturing, infrastructure, affordable housing?
So definitely the aim of the government is to get the private sector to spend. As far as the government is concerned, they're continuing to spend. The infrastructure spend is still coming. So therefore, you're still seeing movement in cement, steel, construction material, and also because they've got a message to spend on defense. So again, all the defense stocks have done really well and will probably continue to do well. I am not seeing too much. There is some. I'm not seeing too much movement in private sector to start scaling up. And one is because they made it difficult for the banks to give money, but also that they haven't actually decided to come in with a vengeance. So until that comes, we're not going to see a huge movement in the market upwards, because that would be a confidence that, frankly, I'm seeing hidden. But at the same time, you're seeing real estate doing well because people feel that we're in prices are going up and they're firming up, and the sector has cleaned itself up, and therefore the organized realty will be doing well, and we're seeing that in the prices. So it's going to be new sectors coming into vogue, not rather than the old ones, and I think that's what's going to make the market really interesting.
Pashupati, hi, great to have you on the show. So what are these new sectors? Hi. So, looking for markets to be interesting. So what could be new?
So as I said, real estate was hammered down because, there was a lot of things happening in the sector. And now real estate is coming back into fashion. IT has been hammered. I don't think that's going to churn. I saw earlier in the program that you got our good friend Salil coming on the program later to talk about Infosys, but I think the IT sector is tough simply because you've got AI, and now what I've told is a new derivative called AGI, which is where you get computers to write the software to do AI. So that's the next derivative. So, I think the IT companies are going to have some issues. But again, banks, we're having some shift from the PSU banks to the private banks. A couple of the larger private banks have not really performed too well, HDFC Bank and Kotak. So maybe, there's a chance of movement in the other private banks like IndusInd and Axis. But, that's another shuffling of the Nifty Bank Index, which has to happen, because I personally feel that there's a lot of fintech companies that are struggling, and that's going to come back on the banks. But again, they're new sectors, like you mentioned jewelry earlier in the program, gold is going up. So all jewelry companies naturally are going to do well, but I'm not seeing retail public coming and buying jewelry like crazy. But now we've got festivals coming. So let's see how they manage those over the next 2-3 months. So it's interesting times. And again, this is a market which has been for stock pickers. and therefore, you have to pick the right stocks, and those are the ones that are going to really do well.
What about the SMID space, the small and mid cap space? Are there any interesting themes out there? Because, like you said, jewelry. Now you have stocks across the spectrum. You have Titan on the one end, and you have Thangamayil Jewelry on the other, with Kalyan and Senco somewhere in the middle. So how do you pick stocks? Like you're saying, it's a stock-specific market. So how do you back these themes, and what are some of the stocks that you like, if at all?
So actually, I'll take an analogy of jewelry stocks versus like broking stocks. Now, some of the more transparent brokers are saying these are our number of trades. This is the average value per trade, and trying to open up their balance sheets to be more sort of transparent. Maybe the jewelry companies can start saying, this is our raw gold inventory. If they do that, all of a sudden you'll have a differentiator. You'll know who's actually holding gold and who's not. And then, given that gold price seems to be doing well, I think that that will also take a new turn and provide a differentiator within the jewelry stocks. I mean, I honestly don't know how much gold Thangamayil Jewelry has in stock, but if it's like got tons and tons, then maybe it's a stock worth looking at. That's just my thought. You're talking about also mid caps. One of my favorites was Indus Tower, because I actually believe the telecom sector is going to continue to raise its ARPUs, and that's going to be good for all of them. And all of a sudden, it got put into an index, so it jumped up, and now all of a sudden Vodafone decided to sell off a big chunk of their holding, so it's come back down again. But I think that's a stock that is definitely worth having. And as telecom grows and as more and more people use data and more people use 5G, the towers are obviously going to be needed, and they're the leader. They are the publicly listed tower company. So I think definitely it's participating in the telecom sector.
Okay, that's Indus. That's interesting. Pashupati, give us another name, one or two more names, stocks that you're finding interesting at this point, or stories that are really capturing your imagination.
Well, I have had fun being up and down in Paytm. It looks like Paytm had a lot of things going for it, and then they lost their banking license, and now it looks like it's getting peeled into pieces. So actually, I'm not as wild about it as I was. I actually lost money in it, so because I thought that the business model seems to have gone haywire after they lost their banking license. But again, I think at some point, once they're now talking about selling off their theater and tickets business, it'll probably come down a little bit once that sale takes place. And then, maybe there's a chance that it'll come down, because at the end of it all, I believe the marketplace has some value to one of the larger players, and what that value is, we'll see. But, I think it's maybe the value is 50 rupees lower or 75 rupees lower, but at some point it's going to be interesting to buy it again.
Do you, Pashupati, do you like the guys who could be buying Paytm's theatre and tickets business? I'm talking about, of course, Zomato. We were just discussing, before you joined us, how this quick commerce is a whole different world. You can, from your toothpaste to your clothes to your shoes to, what have you, the biggest brands, everything's out there. And of course, the next big thing for the market is going to be the Swiggy IPO. So what do you think of Zomato at this juncture?
They're all going to do fine. They're all going to do great. And as what they're all doing is going to other product deliveries. And the delivery last mile is, again, always been a challenge in India. The Chinese seem to have cracked it, because in China, they're so used to getting delivery in half an hour and 1 hour that, if you have a 2 hour, if you say, I'm going to deliver you tomorrow, you're not going to get the click. And I think we're heading there. It's going to take time, and there's going to be a lot of blood on the streets. But I don't know how they've done it, but it's absolutely fantastic the way they do it. And, I remember maybe 3-4 years ago meeting someone who was very senior in Carrefour in China. And he said, we can only do business if the person is within 2 kilometers of our stores. Everywhere else, some other... He didn't call it that, but a kirana wala was doing the delivery and getting the contract. So, it's a very difficult space. But again, if they're focusing on last mile, they will do fine. And, certainly the number of players is going to get less, and therefore it's going to be more interesting. And the ones that survive are going to do really well.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for joining in, Pashupati. Have a good weekend, and thanks for being with us on the channel. Sonia. Thank you. That's the word coming in on the market and on individual stocks and sectors. Market, by the way, is flattened out completely now. So